Just need to tell someone. I've been lurking in this group and others like it for the last few weeks. I feel like I never get to give anyone the full picture, so I'm going to try here. This is going to be long, so I apologize in advance. I've known my husband since we were in college, dating his roommate. Long story short, he and I were friends for many years. I had my daughter, then became a single mom. He got married, had an affair on deployment and divorced to marry his AP. Then divorced again. Former AP. I was friends with his first wife, so I had a front row seat to the demise of the marriage. After his second marriage ended, we started dating in 2017, moved in together in 2018, got married in 2019, and had our son in 2020. I had a very difficult pregnancy and first year with our son. I gained weight while pregnant and couldn't seem to lose it. In spring of 2021, shortly after our son turned 1, he left on his third deployment. I was hoping to use this time to lose weight and reconnect, as the long distance forces you to talk rather than just go through the motions. Within 2 weeks I knew that was not going to happen. I accused him of cheating a month after he left. I saw everything from his first marriage, so when I saw the same signs, I knew. The only time he would talk to me was about one sexual fantasy he wanted. He always wanted to see me be with another man, so I would engage him with his fantasy just so he would talk to me. When an ex-boyfriend of mine messaged, I started flirting, sending screenshots of the conversations to my husband, which he encouraged. My husband and I began discussing meeting up with my ex. After a few days of messages, my ex told me that I was beautiful. Then my husband suddenly told me to cut it off. I lied and told him that I did, but I kept messaging my ex, primarily because it had been so long since I felt wanted and my self-esteem was in the gutter and I was hanging on by a thread. Thus began my emotional affair. After just over 2 months, my husband found out via phone records and I immediately cut off all contact, blocked his number, and on all social media. I spent the next months apologizing. I felt so horrible about what I had done. During his deployment, both before and after my affair, he treated me like trash. He repeatedly would insult me, call me names, and blame me for everything, and told me he hated me. If I messaged him, then I was irritating and annoying. If I didn't, then I was ignoring him and wasn't there for him. He would ignore me for days, but if I didn't answer his calls immediately, then he would call the Alexa in the house to yell at me. At one point screaming at my then 12-year-old daughter to tell me to answer the feeing phone or he would divorce me. He was able to come home during his deployment for a family emergency. He spent the week telling me I was horrible. He didn't want to be near me. And he left early to go back because he couldn't stand me. While he was home, we had sex once, which I now refer to as the revenge fuck, as he did not look at me, spoke degrading things to me, and got up and left once he was finished without even looking at me. I was left bruised, torn, and ashamed. It was the most violated I have ever felt in my life. After his deployment, he struggled significantly with alcohol and on a very drunk night, physically attacked me, throwing things at me as I ran away, grabbing me and throwing me into a mattress, shattering my phone and my car keys so I couldn't call for help or get away. After that night his drinking slowed down, and we fell into a sort of a pretend normal. I kept thinking I will figure things out once each crisis settles down, except there doesn't seem to be an end. Dewey, job loss, possible move. After he got a Dewey, he began attending AA and stopped drinking. He disclosed his affair to me for the first time on September 20th. He explained it as a one-night stand on deployment in retaliation for my own affair. He blamed me for it, and I believed it was my fault. After a month, he admitted on October 26 to a purely physical affair that lasted his entire deployment. In the next weeks, I found out that it was a physical and emotional affair that started with flirting and pictures before deployment, and lasted at least 3 months after he returned, for a total of 1 year and 8 months. In October, in a fit of rage, I admitted to him that I had sex with my affair partner once. Previously I had told him it was only emotional. He had told me several times if he found out I had sex with my AP he would divorce me. I think my biggest issue is that it is not just the affair, it's how he treated me for the last several years. For 2+ years I have taken the blame for everything wrong. He was drinking because of me and my affair, he attacked me because he was angry about me and my affair, he was talking to and sexting other women because of me and my affair, he lost his job because of me and my affair, it goes on and on. For 2+ years every fight ended with him saying, "Yeah, well, you had an affair." We could argue about who would do the dishes and he would turn it around and say that I had to because of my 2-month emotional affair. Now I find out that he was involved in a full physical and emotional affair long before mine started and long after mine ended. It makes me feel as if that last 2+ years of my life have been a complete lie. Knowing that he treated me with contempt and hatred, emotionally and physically abused me. Meanwhile telling his AP that he loved her and wanted her. When we first got together I thought that I was different and he wouldn't do to me what he did to his last 2 wives because he and I had such a long history of friendship. Now I know how naive and ridiculous that sounds. I have seen so much change in him over the last year, but especially over the last month. Since he stopped drinking last year he has become a better father, he has been helping around the house, and he does a much better job at controlling his anger. He has started taking responsibility for his actions, acknowledging how he hurt me, and apologizing for what he's done. There are days that I want to reconcile and be with him because I know how great of a person he can be. Other days I am so filled with rage that I want justice for everything he's done to me. Other days I can barely get out of bed, weighed down with self-hatred, no self-worth, no self-esteem, and so much guilt and shame and embarrassment. Although my husband is doing better, he's still angry about how I slept with my AP. I struggle to not blame him for my affair. He had beat me down so far that I felt like nothing, and the only reason I even crossed the line with flirting in the first place was to fulfill his fantasy. Right now most days it feels hopeless. Thank you to anyone who stuck around and read this whole novel. I just felt like I needed to get it all out. Partner of 3 years cheated, what now? Things had been going downhill for about a year. I knew we had issues, but I didn't realize that we'd devolved to the point of infidelity. I'd prefer not to go into details, but suffice it to say that we'd each contributed to the decline of the relationship. The circumstances of the downfall aren't what I'm here to talk about. What matters is that we were going from bad to worse, and it was no longer a healthy relationship. Long story short, we agreed to temporarily separate, take some time apart to work on personal issues, and then do our best to reconcile. But something was nagging me, something just wasn't right. I'd been suspecting for months that he was cheating, but when I brought up my concerns he denied it, even tried to make me feel bad for not trusting him. He assured me that he wasn't like that, promised me he would never cheat, and scolded me for not trusting him. Obviously it was a lie. He went to stay with his parents, but he wasn't able to take all of his belongings in one shot, and among the things he'd left behind was an old laptop. I acknowledge that it was wrong of me to snoop, but it was a damn good thing that I did. He'd been cheating for several weeks, as I suspected, but that wasn't the worst part. I don't blame him for falling out of love with me, and I understand why he ended up cheating, but what he was planning next was downright evil, betrayal beyond belief. It was bad enough to discover his affair, especially after being gaslighted for so long. It was just seconds after I discovered the infidelity that he began to type. Right before my eyes he revealed in real time his despicable scheme. He was going to make temporary peace with me, and lie for a few more months. He intended to fake reconciling with me solely for the apartment, because it was inconvenient for him to stay with his parents as they lived out of town. Once he found a new apartment, he was going to leave me for her, as soon as it was convenient. I confronted him and he had actually had the audacity to deny it. I suspect he only feels remorse that he was caught. He says that he didn't mean it, that it was the heat of the moment, he was just venting, and he really did want to stay with me. Now I don't know what to believe. Is this worth trying to save? What would be reasonable conditions, demands to re-establish trust? Where do I go from here?